what are some practical things to say, okay, this matters, right? Like what can you tell them, Dr. Hannaford?
Well, first of all, parents, you've got to get out of stress. So self-care and doing the movements that I will show you, these cross-lateral movements, actually what they do is they force the brain into an integrated state and get both hemispheres going and then the body going too. And they increase dopamine. So we need, as parents, as adults, to stop our stress. And it's bad for us. I mean, it's a killer. It's a life-threatening situation when we get under stress. So one of the things that you saw from Dr. Rimka is these are called thinking caps. And we're working with, we now know that it's interesting in the National Medical Library in Washington, D.C., there are currently 60 journals coming in monthly just on research on traditional Chinese medicine. And we know that we have what the Chinese have told us for 5,000 years. We have all these meridian systems. And we know that when we activate this, our ears, believe it or not, we are activating all of these meridian points and we're waking up the whole body. So in the research, they're finding when you're opening the ears up here, you're actually getting nerve activation in the feet. And you go around and down and you're getting activation all along the spine and then down in the head area. And so it's profound in waking the body up. And in the process, it's also activating both hemispheres of the brain and getting that brain functioning again. Another activity, of course, is walking. Just walking. When you're walking, you're doing what we call a cross crawl. So you're crossing the midline of the body and you're helping the whole body. The other thing that's really important is if you can get your elbow to your opposite knee, and then your elbow to your opposite knee, as you're walking, being very conscious. And the slower you go with balance, you're activating a system called the vestibular system, the vestibule, the entryway into the brain that has to do with the inner ear, but also the core of the body, the navel, and that whole solar plexus area. And you're actually waking up the brain, okay? And interestingly enough, if we go back to Chinese medicine, when you move your arm across like this, you're activating what we know as the spleen meridian. And the spleen meridian has to do, when it's off, with worry. So by going very slowly like this, you're helping to get rid of worry. And then by crossing the kidney meridian has to do with fear. And so the kidney meridian has to do with leaning over. It has to do with this muscle here. It's called the psoas, the iliopsis muscle. And so when that contracts, it allows us to lean over or lift our legs, okay? And so when we do that consciously, like this, we're actually getting rid of fear and worry. The worry has to do with the spleen meridian and the latissimus dorsi muscle. And we're actually seeing.
I love it.
So walking in nature, being present, being in the moment. Don't take your cell phone. No cell phones, no computer. Walk in nature without them. You be aware of that. The other movement that is really profound is called the hookups. And so if you take your hands, we know that there's the huge area up here, both in the motor cortex and the sensory cortex, so the frontal lobe and the parietal lobe have to do with the hand. This is the last structure to fully develop on the body. It's our most important structure are the hands. The more we use our hands, the more of the brain is being activated. And right now, this doesn't count.
Right. She's
No,
swiping as if she's texting. I'm going to side note you. This is why my son learned that right there. Learned to knit, learned to make candles by hand, learned all of these things before I ever attempted. It learned the violin at 4, long before he learned to read, or I asked him to know how to read. Right. So learning, understanding what's going on by learning to knit and crochet and things, woodworking and making things, whittling with your hands. Parents, let your children do these things. That's how they're going to activate their brain. That's how they become a better reader. That's how they become better at math. It's by doing these things when they're younger with their hands. And nowadays, a lot of kids having, handwriting therapy is a major thing in OT because kids' hands are so weak and so uncoordinated because they've never made Play-Doh with, like flour and water and kneaded dough. Their hands are too weak. They're not used to actually having any skill to do anything because they're on devices instead of making Play-Doh or making wax or knitting. Again, which is part of the amazing kind of education you can get in some of these like Waldorf philosophy or things like that. So
and Montessori.
So I want to,
and they can't use clothespins even. They don't have that strength there to do that. And get them cleaning the house.
Yeah.
A young child, you give them a rag and say, why don't you clean the refrigerator? They love it. Yeah. It gives them something of value to do.
Another good one is laundry, right? Because of how that folding laundry crosses over left and right. That's a great one that I tell parents. Yeah. I'm amazed how many patients I have whose kids don't do any chores. I mean, they're 7, 8, 9, 10, 12. I go, they're not doing chores. Mom will go, no. And of course she's exhausted. I'm like, so, okay, step one, you need more. So you can have self-care. The kids have to start cleaning and they should know how to do this. It actually makes them feel good. It makes them have a sense of accomplishment. They know they're contributing. It's beneficial to have them learning. Plus they get the neurological skill. All right. So I'm sorry I interrupted, but that was, I think, so important people to understand that this isn't done developing till about the hands, you guys. So about 20 years old. It takes a very long time to get this, but you have to start. My son whittled with ivory soap. It's an old thing my mom had us do.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Ivory soap bars. And we make like with the knife, the little boats and floating them in the bathtub and stuff. And so the thing I taught him how to do. And a lot of parents think I'm crazy that I would let a little kid have a knife. I'm like, he's fine. He knows how to cut. He can make soup. He should be learning how to use a knife, and how to cook and make things with me. It makes him stronger and he has to get skill set. I think we're overprotecting our kids as if they can't do anything. And it's making them weaker and weaker and weaker. So hand development, getting outside.
Really important.
Lots of
and then hand development early. Babies need to be on their bellies. We know all of these reflexes and stuff, and they need to crawl. They should not be walking before the age of 1. And parents shouldn't be pulling them up on their legs because they're not ready. When they're ready to stand, they will pull themselves up on furniture. Then but they need to be down there where they're, working their hands and their strength. And then they need to be able to pull themselves up on furniture and then all sorts, whatever they can do with their hands is great. So this movement is, if you take your hands, turn the backs to back, so the thumbs are down, then put one on the other like this, roll it under, get your shoulders away from your earlobes. This is huge. What you're activating is a huge area of the brain because this is so complex. You can feel all the fingers. And then cross one ankle over the other. And you can do this sitting down, but it's better if you stand up because then you have to get your balance and you're activating that vestibular system, which helps the whole brain to think and work better. Okay. And
I would add to it, I would want them to be barefoot on the grass outside in the sun.
Great.
That would be how, if you want to supercharge this.
Optimal. Yeah. And then just rest your tongue on the roof of your mouth. And it's interesting. If you have any kind of balance problems, or the child does, have them click like you would if you were nursing. And we find a couple things with this. If you feel back here, when you do that, what you're feeling are the ligaments of the tongue, the lingual ligaments. Those ligaments activate the vestibular system. So they're helping to activate that whole balance system right there. Also, what you're hitting on the roof of the mouth is the sphenoid bone, which is what we call the bat wing bone. But it helps it move and oxygenate the brain. So you're getting movement. You can feel that within here too, that whole thing. So laying the tongue on the roof of the mouth and lying, and then just being present. This is really important. Focusing, looking around at your environment. This will stop the stress so fast. Dean Ornstein did a wonderful research project with 800 cardiac patients. And he took 400 of them. He says, when you start to feel stress, sit down, look around you, get really present, and be grateful for where you are and, you know, what is going on in your, just be really present in this moment. The other 400, that was the control. That control group at the end of the year, 43% had reoccurring heart attacks. The group that stopped and got present, no reoccurring heart attacks. So getting present is really, really important. We need to be present. This is a biggie. When our children come to us, and women, we're worse than the men in the fact that we are multitaskers. And so we're constantly thinking of everything and doing everything and whatever. And so oftentimes when our children come to us, we're like, okay. And we've got many things going on. We've got our shopping list and we're, you know, trying to deal with the child, and we're not present. Our children need our presence more than anything, especially when the rest of the world is falling apart. They need us to be present. We need to be present. We need to be present with our spouses. We need to be present with our friends. We absolutely need to listen. This is the biggie. And so stopping everything we're doing, getting down on the level of our child, or if your son's 15, he's probably tall, actually being present, being there, looking, listening, not trying to figure out what the next thing is that you're going to be doing is so vital. It may be the most important thing you can do. And we know with children, it has to do with timing. So if you have a child that is 3 minutes is max. That's all they need for you to be absolutely present, for them to feel safe and go out and live in their world. 5, give them 5 minutes. I do the infinity sign, which is what we tell children, it's an 8 lying on its side. It's a lazy 8 lying, making sure we go up in the center because we're following, again, a central meridian. We're doing that and just working this, you know, over and over with one hand and then with the other hand and then both. And what you're doing is you're forcing both hemispheres to be very active so that you have all that you need